What happened at home plate tonight will go down as one of the most shocking moments of the 2026 MLB season. Three San Francisco Giants players charged Shohei Ohtani after he hit his seventh home run of the year, setting off a full-scale confrontation that resulted in all three being immediately ejected from the game. It was a moment that stopped the sport cold. Players on both benches were stunned, umpires scrambled to restore order, and the stadium fell into a kind of disbelieving silence before the noise of the crowd came crashing back in. What made this moment so jarring was not just its violence or its drama, but the fact that nothing Ohtani had done justified it. He hit a baseball over a fence. That is what he is supposed to do. And it began, as so many remarkable things in the 2026 season have, with a rivalry that never needs any extra fuel. The Dodgers vs. Giants matchup carries more history and tension than almost any other in baseball. Every time these two franchises meet, the stakes feel amplified, the score matters more, the individual moments carry more weight, and the players on both sides understand that this is not an ordinary game on an ordinary night. Fans from both sides pack the stadium louder than usual. Dugouts are more animated, everything is heightened, and on this particular night the atmosphere inside the stadium was already at a high pitch before the first pitch was thrown. The reason was simple. Shohei Ohtani was in the lineup, and whenever Ohtani plays, something memorable tends to happen. Standing on the mound for San Francisco was Adrian Houser, a right-handed pitcher tasked with neutralizing the most dangerous hitter in the sport. That is never an easy assignment, and it is one that carries particular weight in a rivalry game where every run feels magnified. Houser had his arsenal available: sinkers, change-ups, and the ability to work both sides of the plate, but he was facing a hitter whose combination of bat speed, plate discipline, and raw power makes even well-executed pitches vulnerable. Ohtani does not offer pitchers much room for error, and Houser knew from the first inning that this was going to be a long, difficult night. Ohtani stepped into the batter's box for his first at-bat and immediately made his presence felt. Houser worked through several tough pitches, trying to establish his pattern and test Ohtani's discipline. Ohtani stayed patient, tracking each offering carefully. Then came the fourth changeup of the at-bat, drifting outside the zone, and Ohtani punished it. He drove the ball hard into the right field gap for a key hit, putting himself on base and applying immediate pressure to the Giants' defense and pitching staff. The strategic value of that moment was clear. Ohtani on base in the early innings forces the entire opposing team to adjust, pitchers get cautious, infielders shift their positioning, and the tension in the dugout rises. He had done exactly what elite leadoff threats are supposed to do: set the tone before the game had even fully opened up. With one out and the bases loaded, the Dodgers manufactured their first run of the night. Will Smith stepped up and hit a deep sacrifice fly to the outfield. Ohtani, standing at third base, read the ball perfectly and tagged up the instant it was caught. He came around and scored, putting the Dodgers ahead 1-0. What made that moment particularly significant was the context surrounding it. That run scored on Ohtani's first hit since May 10th against the Atlanta Braves, a gap that had stretched across multiple games and had begun to raise quiet questions about his timing and offensive rhythm. Breaking that mini-slump with a productive hit in a high-leverage rivalry game was exactly the kind of moment Ohtani needed. It was not just a run on the scoreboard. It was a statement that he was beginning to find his way back. The Giants answered and tied the game at 1-1, and the tension that had been building through the early innings now had nowhere to go but up. The third inning arrived with both teams level, and Adrian Houser took the mound knowing that Ohtani was due up with everything still to play for. Houser made his choice, an outside sinker, the kind of pitch designed to neutralize left-handed power by keeping the ball away from the barrel and forcing the hitter to reach across the plate. Against most hitters, it is a sound strategy. Against Ohtani, it became a catastrophic miscalculation. Ohtani's hip rotation engaged first, the kinetic chain that generates power in the elite swing, followed by his hands, which snapped through the hitting zone with remarkable speed. The bat made contact, and the result was immediate and undeniable. The ball left the bat at 105.9 miles per hour and traveled 398 feet over the left field wall. His seventh home run of the 2026 season, and it ended a 12-game home run drought that had been a source of growing concern for the Dodgers. The stadium erupted. Ohtani began his home run trot, composed and unhurried, the way he always is after making contact like that. The crowd noise was deafening. Everything at that exact moment was exactly as it should have been, and then it wasn't. As Ohtani completed his home run trot and touched home plate, three Giants players, Jun Hewley, Luis Orors, and Willie Adams, suddenly charged toward him. What started as heated words exchanged at close range escalated rapidly into shoving and physical contact. The scene unfolded in full view of every camera in the stadium, broadcast live to viewers across the country. Those watching in the stands and at home were not prepared for what they were seeing. Analysts who reviewed the footage noted that this was not a spontaneous flash of emotion in isolation. It appeared to be the release of built-up frustration accumulated over the course of the entire game. Every hit Ohtani had produced, every moment of pressure he had applied to their pitcher, every shift in momentum, it had all been building, and it came out at the worst possible moment and in the worst possible way. Ohtani was visibly stunned. He had done nothing outside the rules of the game. He had hit a legitimate home run, a fair ball cleanly struck that traveled over the outfield wall. In baseball, legitimate home runs are always respected. A player runs the bases, touches home plate, and that is the end of it. The fact that three opposing players crossed that unspoken but deeply understood boundary shocked every person in the building and everyone watching on television. The Dodgers' dugout did not hesitate. The entire bench cleared within seconds. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, and Will Smith were among the first players to charge toward home plate in response. The scene became a full-scale confrontation, with players from both teams converging on a single spot. Home plate, usually the site of celebration, had become the center of one of the ugliest moments of the season. Umpires stepped in immediately, along with coaches and security personnel who rushed onto the field. Separating the players took time and effort. The game was delayed for several minutes while order was gradually restored. Even after the players were separated, the atmosphere inside the stadium had fundamentally changed. There was no pretending this was a routine interruption. Everyone in the building understood they had witnessed something extraordinary and not in a good way. The umpires did not move on without accountability. They reviewed all available footage from every camera angle, conferred at length on the field, and made their determination. The verdict was unambiguous. John Healy, Luis Oroz, and Willie Adams were officially ejected from the game for unsportsmanlike conduct. All three were gone. The ruling sent a clear and firm message. Retaliatory and violent behavior toward an opposing player will not be tolerated, regardless of the circumstances that led to it. There is no frustration, no rivalry, no scoreline that justifies what those three players did. The reaction from the fans inside the stadium was immediate. As the announcements came through, and the three Giants players were escorted off the field, the crowd responded with sustained and loud booing. San Francisco had come to the ballpark expecting a competitive game. What their players had delivered instead was an embarrassment that overshadowed everything else that happened on the field. The footage spread online within minutes of the incident occurring. Clips of the brawl circulated across every major platform, accumulating millions of views in a matter of hours. Sports journalists, former players, and commentators all weighed in, and the reaction was striking in how unified it was. There was no significant faction defending what Healy, Oroz, and Adams had done. Across the board, analysts and commentators lined up to address what had happened, and the tone was consistent and harsh. The three Giants players were criticized broadly for what was widely described as a breakdown in professionalism at the highest level of the sport. The broader conversation quickly extended beyond the individuals involved and became a discussion about the culture of the game itself, about what is acceptable in a heated rivalry and what crosses a line that cannot be uncrossed. The central narrative that emerged was pointed and precise. Instead of responding to Ohtani's excellence with the respect it warranted, Healy, Oroz, and Adams had allowed their emotions to overtake their judgment and their professionalism, and they had done so on a nationally televised stage. The sport of baseball has a long tradition of respecting opponents who perform at an elite level. Breaking that tradition the way those three players did was not just a violation of the rules. It was a violation of what the game is supposed to represent. Through all of it, Ohtani did not retaliate. He did not escalate. He walked away from the confrontation and allowed the umpires and the officials to handle the situation. In a moment that was defined by the loss of composure from three of his opponents, Ohtani's calm was the defining image that every fan and analyst remembered. That calm was not a surprise to anyone who has followed Shohei Ohtani over the course of his career. He has always operated with a level of mental discipline that separates him from almost everyone else in the sport. He plays the game within its rules, he respects its traditions, and when things go wrong around him, he does not add to the chaos. He walks away. He lets his performance speak for itself, and on this night, his performance had already spoken clearly before any of the chaos began. The universal reaction from fans and the media was a deepening of respect for Ohtani, not just for what he had done on the field, but for how he had handled what happened afterward. In a sport where confrontations often escalate because players on both sides refuse to back down, Ohtani's decision to disengage immediately was both mature and meaningful. It reinforced every positive thing that has been said and written about his character since he arrived in Major League Baseball. The home run and the brawl that followed existed within a larger context that is worth understanding fully. Shohei Ohtani is not having the season in 2026 that he had in previous years. The demands of competing as both a starting pitcher and an everyday hitter across a full 162-game schedule are taking a measurable physical toll in May, and the numbers reflect it. His current statistics stand at .233 batting average, 7 home runs, and a .767 OPS, all figures that are significantly below the standard he set in his most recent seasons. To understand how far below that standard these numbers sit, consider the comparison directly. In 2024, Ohtani posted a .350 batting average, 11 home runs at this point in the season, and a 1.081 OPS. In 2025, the numbers were .307, 13 home runs, and a 1.056 OPS. The gap between those figures and what he is producing in 2026 is significant by any measurement. The lowest individual point of his 2026 season to this point came on May 12, when he went 0 for 5 in a single game, his worst offensive performance since joining the Los Angeles Dodgers. The fatigue associated with two-way responsibilities is not a theory. It is visible in the statistics and in the quality of at-bats that Ohtani has been producing throughout May. The Dodgers coaching staff has been watching these trends carefully, and manager Dave Roberts made a decision following this game that reflected both caution and strategic planning. Roberts announced plans to give Ohtani rest from his hitting duties on May 14th and May 15th. The goal is direct: reduce the physical strain on his body, allow him to recover some of the mental and technical sharpness that has been eroded by accumulated fatigue, and prevent the batting slump from bleeding into the one area where Ohtani has continued to perform at a high level, his pitching. This kind of management decision speaks to something broader than one player's statistics at one point in a season. It speaks to how elite organizations handle generational talents across the length of a long and grueling MLB campaign. The Dodgers are not panicking. They are being deliberate. They understand that Shohei Ohtani at full capacity in September and October is worth far more than a few extra at-bats in May. Protecting him now, when fatigue is already a visible factor, is the correct call, and it reflects the kind of long-term thinking that has defined how the Dodgers have managed their roster under Dave Roberts. The sequence of events that defined this night was unlike almost anything the 2026 MLB season had produced to that point. Ohtani arrived at the ballpark carrying a mini-slump and an offensive profile that had disappointed relative to his own previous standards. He broke through with a key hit in his first at-bat, scored the game's opening run, and then hit a 105.9 mph line drive 398 feet over the left field wall for his 7th home run of the year, ending a 12-game drought and reminding every person in the stadium exactly who he is. 3 Giants players responded to that home run by charging him at home plate. They were ejected before the dust had settled. The Dodgers rallied around their superstar. The game was delayed. Social media moved immediately. Analysts condemned what had happened. And through all of it, through every second of chaos and confrontation, Shohei Ohtani walked away with his composure fully intact. Ohtani didn't need to say a word. His bat and his character said everything that needed to be said.